Wouldn't we all like to enjoy healthier, lusher, more beautiful and varied gardens whilst putting less time, effort, energy and resources in? Getting more out whilst putting less in is certainly a dream for most of us, even for those of us who enjoy spending time outside. And in today's video, I want to go through a method which could definitely play a part in our gardens going forwards. Hydrozoning then plays a key role in the sustainable garden design and maintenance in hotter, drier climates in the UK, particularly those where water usage is either restricted or incredibly expensive. But back here, we're just coming now to the end of what has been described as the driest spring on record, a spring with minimal rainfall, where it's actually felt like summer at times. And I'm sure a lot of you can remember just a few years ago now, the summer of 22, when the lush green countryside turned parched and brown, when we reached a sweltering 40 degrees for the first time ever. There's no doubt that the climate is changing, our seasons are shifting, and our gardens may have to evolve. But today's video is not about sustainability, it's not about compromising our garden dreams, it's about something that we can look into now and potentially have more diverse and beautiful gardens going forwards. I believe hydrozoning offers an exciting opportunity for those of us who are passionate about plants, creating a beautiful outdoor space to really see our gardens and plant choices differently. And as it turns out, before I even knew the phrase, before I even understood what it meant, hydrozoning played a key role in how I designed, planned and planted the garden here for two key reasons. The first one, very basic and simple. I had no intention of dragging a hosepipe up our 70-metre garden to water the sunny end every week in summer. I have no time for that. And secondly, pride dilemma that a lot of us who enjoy our plants and gardens face. If I was ever to go on holiday during summer, when the weather was hot, dry, maybe during a heat wave, how can I make it simple and idiot-proof to water the garden whilst we're away for whichever relative was unlucky enough to get the responsibility? Well, bear in mind that one of those relatives, who I won't mention by name, didn't actually put any water down for our dogs while we left them with them for one day because the dogs didn't ask for a drink. The need for a simple garden care and watering method for me was high. But if following these principles helps us enjoy a greater, diverse range of plants whilst using less water, then that's got to be great for our gardens, the wildlife and the plants as well. So let's get into it. I guess your first questions might be then, what is hydrozoning and what benefits will it bring me in my garden? Well, very simply, and you can probably guess this, you're all clever people, hydrozoning is the grouping or clustering together of plants with similar watering requirements in a garden design or landscape, as simple as that. Whether you use automatic irrigation, like I saw everywhere on our recent holiday to Portugal, or you just water manually by hand with a watering can or a hose, it can reduce the overall amount of water and it has a lot of benefits for our plants too. Now, I will be talking about ways to reduce water in the garden at some point in the future. That's not the focus of today's video. And again, lots of you already know the best ways to do this. You can install water butts. Apparently it does help if you actually pull them into your gutters. We can reduce cement in our gardens. You haven't seen that mixer there behind me. Today's video is not all about that. It's about ways we can potentially design and plant our gardens more cleverly to make more out of less. But hydrozoning, what are the real benefits for our plants? However you water your garden, if you simply use a larger volume of water and average it out amongst your whole garden, you might find that some plants with larger leaves, for example, like this gunnera here, those can struggle during the dry summer periods. And then plants which come from Mediterranean, drier or arid regions of the world, those might even start to show symptoms of overwatering, which isn't great for any plant in your garden. Hydrozoning then, and grouping plants together in terms of their watering requirements, means in theory, you're going to use less water overall, and plants are more likely to receive a closer to optimal amount for their best growth possible. So going back to my garden here, in this middle jungle section here, which is planted up to take advantage of the shade from these trees here, I've really put a lot of effort into improving the soil too. The gunnera, the big leaves, the tree ferns, the regersea, there's a lot of plants here with beautiful lush foliage and they all appreciate a decent amount of water in summer. So very simply, if I went away, I would say water the middle section, there we go, job done. And in the future, if I do get automatic irrigation put in, it'd be nice and easy to get it sorted for this area here. The plants which need the water are positioned together, they look great together, and those will be the watering priority. And when it comes to the other end of the garden, closer to the house, particularly where I put the new raised beds in, I've gone for a lot of plants which don't have high watering requirements. And at the far end, around my Mediterranean fire pit project, check out my last video to see a full comprehensive plant tour looking around that section. Those plants really thrive in hot, dry locations naturally anyway. So it's very much the way I've looked at the garden here, planted to really take advantage of those shadier spots, and where the ground is naturally sunnier and better drained anyway, I've chosen plants which, once they're established and settled in, can really thrive without much in the way of additional watering. I have also got parts of the garden, like here with the bamboo, other areas with the palms, which definitely appreciate more water during extended summer dry spells, but they don't require it to survive and thrive. These areas are, we'll say, medium water usage. So I guess the key thing really is that in my garden, I've split it into three main groups. There's areas of garden which need a lot of water, regular. They appreciate the humidity, the moisture, and they would really struggle for maybe 2 or 3 weeks during a very hot summer spell without any kind of additional watering. I've then got areas like this here, which simply get on with it, would appreciate a bit more water during dry spells, but are certainly less of a priority. And then I've got areas which, once established, they won't need any kind of watering at all, apart from if we have absolutely month after month of very, very dry weather. For example, this spring, I've only watered my Viper area once, and it's come together very, very well. So there are plants that we can use, planting styles, which have very, very low, minimal watering requirements. But the key thing is, however you choose to group or see your plants, is that I haven't just spread the plants around the garden in an eclectic mixture. There is some kind of structure to the way that I've zoned the garden up to make it easier for watering going forwards. Now, obviously, grouping the plants together by their water requirements, it does have visual results too, huge benefits to the garden. Plants which naturally have similar watering requirements often just look so much better together. So in my jungle garden behind me there, I've got lots of big leaves, lush foliage, ferns, bright green, beautiful forms there. All those plants really enjoy the higher humidity, the moisture, and the cooler temperatures in the shade during summer. You can't have a jungle garden without being slightly overplanted to an extent, and those plants nudged in against each other, fighting their way up for the light, they really do look sensational. But then when it comes to the dry parts of the garden, the sparser look, the bluer succulents there, the yuccas, the agaves, the gorgeous little sempervivums and sedums, all those plants really need a bit more space. They need the airflow around them. So definitely within each planting style, whatever the cosmetic, aesthetic, overall look you're going for, there's certainly benefits to your plants as well. And it's well worth considering when you're buying a plant from a garden centre or nursery, just what kind of condition does that plant enjoy? Where does it come from naturally? It might enjoy the humidity of being planted densely in together with others, or it might need a bit more airflow, a bit more space, and a bit more exposure to really thrive in our climate. But the main goal is that each group of plants is simply healthier. A healthier plant which is adequately hydrated is more likely to settle in faster, grow away better without a lot of extra TLC. Those plants will be more resilient to dry periods that we do have in summer, more resilient to pests and diseases, less maintenance will be required long term, and you're also less likely to have to replace them as well. There's a lot of benefits. I see hydrozoning then as a different way of looking at our gardens, from designing through to planting and care. It definitely offers exciting opportunities for those of us who enjoy growing unusual, amazing plants. And something I discussed in my last video was how really for me, planting the far end of my garden, the Mediterranean Fire Pit area, it really did awaken a creativity within me. I enjoyed experimenting with a different group of plants, different structures, different forms, a completely different colour palette. And whatever your garden style, there's lots of tough and very drought tolerant plants that you can work into it. You don't have to have lush water demanding plants everywhere in your garden. And there's definitely something to be said for mixing things up and having more variety in there. But why would your average UK gardener care after 2 summers which could politely be described as a complete and utter washout? A long way indeed from the Mediterranean dry summers that we're predicted to experience. Well, let me tell you. Well, you see, despite our frequent moanings about the weather as that wind picks up right on cue, us UK gardeners are actually very lucky to have ordinarily such a mild climate. Exceptional summer spells and hosepipe bans aside, for most of the year, most years, we're very lucky that watering isn't even a factor in our garden design and planting choices. We can grow such a wide range of plants here. I mean, here in my garden, I've got palms, I've got yuccas, I've got exotic desert plants at one side of the garden there. I've then got my jungle area with huge, great big leaves, tropical colocasias, just meters apart. The variety of plants that we can grow in our climate really is amazing and mind-boggling. But the truth is, most new gardeners, when they come to plant up a new space, watering isn't even a consideration. The main factors are simply what plants can go into the space, what's your budget, and what is the overall look that you're going for. Plants are mainly a cosmetic or aesthetic choice, influenced by an overall style, and definitely not a result of consideration about water requirements, for now at least, and that's why I think there's real potential for change. For those of us who grow a hardy jungle or tropical style planting like you see behind me, these are plants which require, or at least respond well to, a lot of additional summer watering, particularly if these enjoyable but challenging dry sunny spells continue. It's certainly an obvious downside to this lush and leafy style, and those of you who maybe grow a lot of big leafy plants or plants in pots or containers will also know the battle. Now, I obviously don't know what this summer's got in store for us, but it doesn't take much to imagine a scenario where a spring like we've just had leads straight into a 2022 dry heatwave summer. That would certainly be a challenging period, and one that would force us to question the relationship between watering and our gardens and the plants that we've chosen. I'm sure many of us will be familiar with the phrase associated with Beth Chatto, right plant, right place. Those of you who've been following my mildly comedic series with Mark over his crazy tiki garden, you'll probably be fed up of it by now. But for a lot of us, right plant, right place is really a main reference to the amount of sun and shade a plant requires and can take. It's less for consideration when it comes to how we group those plants, the soil requirements, and also the watering requirements. Obviously, I don't believe that for most of us away from the driest areas, we don't need to start worrying about installing automatic irrigation. We don't need to plant our gardens with swathes of herbs and agaves and yuccas from really dry desert regions. Absolutely not. But I think it's absolutely worth keeping in mind the philosophy of hydrozoning, actually considering how water demanding new plant purchases are and planting them with an element of strategy. That's something I think will be really key going forwards as the weather, the climate gets increasingly erratic, as the water costs get higher and higher every year. And also, more importantly, whilst not compromising on plant health, plant care, and creating a beautiful space. I know what you're thinking, George, stop rambling on. How can us gardeners practically explore hydrozoning and the benefits it can really bring to our spaces? Let's go for it. My garden is admittedly all about the plants. It's my love for so many different unusual, exotic style plants that's really created the garden you see around me. But your garden doesn't have to be as extreme as this. You don't literally need to have a lush and leafy rainforest in your garden. You don't need to have desert or arid planting to really explore the gradient in terms of water requirements that we can get here in our country. And that's probably the first thing that I'd begin with. If you've got a larger garden, think about the distance away from your house. You're not going to be watering at the far end of your garden every single week, or maybe even more often than that in summer. You don't want to be doing that. So naturally, it makes sense to have the drier area, the plants which can thrive on a lot less water, at the far end of your garden. That's exactly what I've done here. I've really taken advantage of the sun when it does come out like it has done now, the drier earth at this part of the garden, and lent into that with my planting choices. But close to your house, it makes sense to have a more lush and leafy, colourful, vibrant garden. Whether you go flowers, vegetables, beautiful exotic shrubs like I do here, there's so many different choices. An important fact, we live in North Lincolnshire, which is on the eastern side of the country. Whether you class it as Midlands or in the north depends very much on where you live yourself, but ultimately it's somewhere in the middle. The soil here is relatively rich, quite nice and loamy. It's not the boggiest soil, but it's not especially sandy either. And when it comes to rainfall, we definitely get more rainfall than the southeast of the country, but also a lot less than the northwest. Again, we're somewhere in the middle. So I think where you are in the country probably really affects the style of gardening that you want to create and the plants which will naturally grow easily for you. I'm sure there's some of you watching in wetter areas that watering is very rarely a requirement for you, and you actually need to grow plants in pots, containers, raised beds just to keep them alive through your wetter winters. I completely understand and sympathise with you. But then there's also people watching in drier areas who, for you, watering is absolutely a key thing now in our current summers. How can you keep certain plants alive? And maybe rationalising what percentage of your garden you use for lush, leafy, tropical style, flowering plants can actually help you water more sustainably and have more time left to actually enjoy your garden yourself. For most of us though, with existing gardens, beautiful planting already, but we're still developing, adding new plants year after year, I think there's a massive way that we can practically improve when it comes to filler or companion plants. We all know the big plants that we want in our gardens, especially those of us in the whole exotic gardening space. We know that we want the specific palm, a bamboo, maybe even a big olive tree. But when it comes to companion or filler plants, we often just go to a garden centre or nursery and just choose whatever we want on a whim. And I think a really big way that we can actually reduce our water requirements, consumption, and help look after our garden so much less effort is definitely choosing complementary plants which have the same water requirements as the main specimen, focal point, or key architectural plants in our garden. So looking around my garden here, I've got palms in this part of the garden, yes. But then to accessorise, I've gone for euphorbias. I've gone for lots of grasses, which really thrive well in these dry conditions. Closest to the house, you might have seen my recent video, my shopping trip to Linden Nurseries. In that video, I go plant shopping for a raised bed. Now, because I was planting a raised bed, I knew that those plants were going to have to survive on a lot less water. And because that part of the garden doesn't really need a huge amount of water anyway, I didn't want anything massively high maintenance. So for me, I went with a simple combination, Stipa or Nozella tenuissima, the ponytail grass, which is very drought tolerant once established. And then I went mainly for salvias, which again, very drought tolerant and need very little in the way of additional watering. So it's really a case of consider your conditions, consider where you are in the country, and consider what your main plants are. And then when you go for filler plants, if you choose plants which have similar requirements and less watering needs where possible, you can definitely reduce the overall amount of maintenance in your garden and the amount of water you need. For those of you who are lucky enough to start with an exciting blank canvas of a new garden, or you've moved to somewhere you're really starting again, I think Hydrozoning offers an exciting opportunity for how you plan and design the garden. I would very much start by sketching out the garden, plan out the areas that you want to use. I think primarily a garden has to start with how you want to enjoy the space, and then also have a think about where the sun goes, which areas have the most sun, which areas you want to enjoy. I would really start from there. And then when it comes to planting, I would concentrate the planting that needs the most care, i.e. the most watering, the most feeding, the most looking after in general, around the areas where you're going to spend most of your time. Close to the house, around your patio, next to a seating area, those are the areas that naturally you'll be able to look after more easily. It'd be so much easier just to water the plants just outside your door than it will to take the hosepipe to the other end of the garden and water there on a regular basis. Maybe for the areas away from the house where you're not going to drag a hosepipe or watering can to every day in summer, maybe choose plants which naturally can thrive in drier areas, more drought tolerant options. That's definitely what I consider, rather than simply ploughing on, continuing more of the same theme and end up having to use either a lot of water or compromising on your plant health and wondering why your plants are struggling during hot, dry summers. Alternatively, something a lot of us can really develop, maybe your front garden, your front driveway really offers some exciting opportunity for beautiful, interesting plants which don't need additional watering to thrive. Definitely something to think about. And in terms of practical ideas, inspiration, I'd highly recommend going on Beth Chatto's website. That's the website I've used for a lot of my accessory and filler plants around here, the herbs, the sedums, and lots of beautiful perennials which I grow here without much in the way of care. There's so many great ideas. Here, I've used grasses, I've used herbs, I've used succulents, I've used sedums. When it comes to bulbs, there's alliums around here. There's a lot of beautiful plants. Upwards, I've got shrubs like euphorbia, very drought tolerant, very easy to grow, and seriously beautiful. And then if you've got dry shade, that is admittedly a little bit trickier and something which I've struggled with here in an area I'll show you very shortly. But there's again, so many beautiful options. Euphorbias pop up again with that Robbie eye. And then you've got mahonias. There's lots of beautiful ground covers like epimediums, which can simply grow away without needing a lot of watering. So whatever the size of your garden, whatever the orientation in terms of the sun, there's a lot of drought tolerant plants that you can plant now and reap the benefits for years to come. Just because an area won't be watered as much doesn't mean that it'll be any less beautiful, any less rich and flower filled. And let's face it, putting a bit more thought in, choosing from a basket of drier plants can actually have more interest, not just for us, but for the wildlife as well. So much better than typical planting, struggling for summer water, or even worse, insipid, low maintenance supermarket car park planting, which I struggle to get excited about. There's no reason not to be creative, beautiful, and inspiring in your plant choices. To go through a specific example here, which might make you think less of me as a gardener and authority behind the camera, but as regular viewers will know, I am more than happy to share my failures, experiences, challenges along the way. I think there's so much more to be learned in them. This area behind me here is very dry, mostly shade. It does get a fair amount of summer sun, but I struggle to grow anything here because of the trees behind. The large cherry trees, the Lelandii next door, they suck all the moisture out of the soil. And throughout the 5 years now that we've been here, nearly anyway, I've tried several different options this part of the garden. First off, I just ploughed straight ahead, tropical style, ensetes, cannas, big leaves. Sure, it looked beautiful that first summer, but it took a lot of watering. The plants never really thrived as much as they did in my real jungle garden. Here it's a bit more exposed, and that thin layer of dry soil on the top, it did absolutely nothing to support that style of planting. So more recently, I changed and adapted it again. Because it's far away from the house, I wanted low maintenance planting, essentially the structural plants that can thrive, do their thing, and not need as much water as a tropical style. So what did I go with? I moved the bamboo up here, I planted several different persicarias, a very fast growing, adaptable, very tolerant plant of many different garden conditions. But even those, as I showed in my last video, have struggled to survive. Not thrive, just survive. The Schefflera, again, a shrub, beautiful exotic that I grow just meters away in my damper garden, absolutely fine. They're even a plant which requires better drainage, but down there, it struggled. So although I thought I'd taken things a step further towards a more sensible garden, the plants still haven't thrived. So really thinking about it, I've got two options in this area here. Either improve the soil even more, add more and more soil conditioner, lots of organic matter, and keep watering this area here. Set up automatic irrigation, keep a sprinkler on it twice a week, or I simply just accept that is what this part of the garden's like. It's very dry and it's a tricky area. It's got some partial shade, a bit of sun in summer. So what's the sensible thing to do? The sensible thing is to plant the plants which naturally thrive in this part of the garden here. Maybe not hydrozoning in particular. This part of the garden isn't your typical full sun problem spot. This is a shady spot for me, but going forwards, I honestly think my way ahead with this part of the garden is to stick to the principles of hydrozoning and plant things like mahonias, plant some really drought-tolerant ground covers, the plants which naturally thrive here with much less effort, which will mean a happier George and much less water overall. Sustainability, environmental concern, cost aside just for a minute, I think that actually considering your garden, how you want to use it, the tricky areas that you might struggle to look after, how much time you actually want to spend looking after your garden, I think if you consider that more before rushing in to dig things up, put hard landscaping in and planting it, can only improve the end result and how much enjoyment you get out of it. If you're somebody who enjoys spending time outside your garden, tweaking it, keeping on top of things, maintaining it, there's so many more things you can do than just watering, and having a more water-wise garden actually frees up your time to spend it on things that you really want to do. And if you're someone who more enjoys creating a beautiful space that you can relax in over our beautiful summer months, that is definitely something where having water-wise plants that can simply get on by themselves for a lot of the year and don't need a lot in terms of maintenance or care and upkeep, that is definitely a win for you. You get to enjoy doing what you want to do and really making the most of your garden. I think for all of us, being in a beautiful garden full of colourful flowers, teeming with wildlife, beautiful foliage to look at, a truly stunning space that wraps around you, that absolutely is a dream. And well worth at least considering the watering demands of the plants you're going to add to that garden, how you're going to plant up, and how you group plants together for, and also considering the exciting world of plants which not just survive but thrive in the dry conditions. These are plants which can definitely make more of a home in the UK going forwards, and you should absolutely use them to upgrade your garden. Obviously as well, I'm not saying rip up your whole garden and convert it to Mediterranean, but there's certainly room if you're starting a brand new garden, maybe developing a raised bed, or simply adding some companion or filler planting to introduce a bit of planting diversity, a bit of variety. I know they say variety is the spice of life, but in a garden, it's also the supply of life too. Having some exotic plants that flower through different periods of the year, maybe looking at you Fatsias, Mahonias for those tricky dry shade areas. And then in summer, there's so many plants here that I've got that although they come from different parts of the world, can really do so much for our pollinators here. You've got to remember that here in the UK, not just pollinators, but the birds that you can hear now and all the wildlife that enjoys our gardens, they're having to cope with shifting seasons, completely erratic weather too. So having plants which flower outside of those times, provide something in the way of habitat and resources, are absolutely a win for them as well. And if having that variety is truly good for our world, our water supplies and our wallets as well, then exploring plants which have lower water requirements and thrive in dry, sunny conditions is absolutely part of the way forwards, particularly when combined with methods to reduce our overall water consumption here in our gardens, which is something that I may touch on in a future video if you'd be interested to see it. As for how to tie together the different areas and styles in your garden, well, there's no easy answer there, but certainly repeating plants like I've done here with this steeper tenuissima that runs from my raised bed through to this Mediterranean area, and also using hard landscaping to tie your whole garden together, which is something you may have seen me wrestle with the idea of in my last video. That's something that subscribers to my channel will no doubt see me exploring and trying to get on top of over the coming years. I'm really looking forward to bringing the whole garden together with a lot of these filler plants and beautiful hard landscaping that will hopefully make a cohesive and really beautiful garden that's got a diverse range of planting. My channel might be called George's Jungle Garden, but that's more of a nod to the botanic variety, the range of exciting and interesting plants which I enjoy growing here. Would I really want to have 500 square meters of thirsty and high maintenance tropical style plants? Well, to be honest with you, with a busy life and a young family currently, it wouldn't be a possibility, certainly not practically. And going forwards, if the extended dry sunny spells are going to continue, it will certainly create a bit of tension between my desire to do the best for each and every plant that I can do in my garden, how I'm actually going to develop the garden further and actually free up the time to do that, and also, probably most importantly, how I'm going to enjoy the garden here, seeing everything develop around me without needing to be an absolute slave to the maintenance of watering. Splitting up my garden was a design choice from the start, and what I'd now class as hydrozoning has really let me explore a greater range of plants, a diverse variety, so many beautiful plants, so many beautiful planting styles, and I'll be able to do that with less maintenance, less resources, and less cost in terms of water bills too. So I think really hydrozoning is definitely part of the solution. For those of us who enjoy the plants in our gardens as much as the countryside around, it's definitely a piece of the puzzle that can go towards creating more sustainable, beautiful gardens, even in more challenging conditions. If you enjoy seeing a garden with a wide range of diverse and beautiful plants, then certainly check out my video that I recorded last summer over at Pan Global Plants with plant hunter extraordinaire Nick Mesa. I'll put a link to that video in the description below. So many stunning plants, a lot of drought-tolerant planting, but mixed in overall with beautiful perennials, a lot of wildlife-friendly flowers, and so much to see around every single corner. If you live in a part of the country, maybe the west or northwest, that experiences a lot more rainfall, then you might very well enjoy my video filled with Shane Bilson over his Stoke-on-Trent jungle garden. Again, I'll put a link to it in the description below. Shane makes beautiful use of water in his garden with multiple ponds, a little stream, beautiful little waterfall, and when I visited last year, it had only been together for just 3 years, some parts of it only a year. But the amount of wildlife, the amount of flowers, the amount of beauty he's created whilst really pushing the boundaries and using practical tips to grow exotics, it really is exceptional, and I think you'll really enjoy that one. And lastly, if you want to see a garden which truly triumphantly combines two different styles, tropical and a forest garden, you should absolutely check out my video looking around the garden, Andrew and Anne-Marie's 50 Shades of Green Urban Forest Garden, a tranquil, beautiful oasis, completely amazing, one of my favourite small gardens I've visited. Have a look at that one, it's in the description below. So I hope you've enjoyed this rambling video, my musings on how this one watering philosophy has helped shape my garden here and might very well do the same for a lot of us going forwards. If you've got any questions or want to know more practical ideas as to how you can introduce hydrozoning into your garden and plant selections, feel free to let me know in the comment section below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So thanks a lot for watching. I'm now actually going to go and do some watering. I'll see you all very soon. See you later.